mean, first and foremost, I want to thank Diane and the entire team because a day of programming this has been. It has been remarkable, the amount of information that we've all shared and kind of learned. It's incredible. And I want to congratulate all of you because what you have done in coming to an event like this and being intentional about your success is really, you are the future of this industry. And so congratulations for kind of taking this step and taking the initiative to be a leader in luxury and to really be amongst those that are defining what the future of luxury looks like for real estate. We heard from some really high-level technical gentlemen and professionals, and so I'm going to bring it back down to the basics because I am 100%. I'm 100% somebody that has cut my teeth in the luxury business. I am a friend maker and kind of somebody that is non-technical. I happen to have a technical application that I'll tell you a little bit about, but for the most part, my career has been forged largely in people-to-people kind of, contact and connections that way. And so what I love is the fact that we're framing everything around technology, but the fact that luxury will never change. And so as we're all in this room and as we're all operating kind of as people that are defining luxury going forward, the fact that at the end of the day, it is our responsibility to define what luxury looks like and to help listen to our clients and our customers and our communities about what luxury is. That truly is kind of that's ground zero, that's where we start. That's as Bruce Turpel, who I will totally fangirl over during this chat. So I'm shameless about that, but as he says, that's table stakes. We've got to be listening and we've got to be totally tuned in. So as a means of a background, I actually, instead of putting my resume or anything like that, I put some of my communities that I belong to as my description of myself. So when you look at, the things that I've done and the way that I connect, I belong from being a dog lover, a people collector. I was a ski racer through college. And so, but then I also, my husband and I founded a brokerage 14 years ago. I still sell a lot of real estate. And then most recently, 4 years ago, I started a technical application called Realm that launched actually just before quarantine, actually 2 weeks before we all headed into quarantine. And Realm is a platform for top producing real estate professionals by invitation only, and it has evolved into an incredible community that we'll kind of talk about as we talk through this chat a little bit more. But as we all know, as we have said, the definition of luxury is changing. It is something that is dynamic, and I think we've heard a lot about that today. How does that apply to all of us and our individual businesses? I think that that's very, very personal, and it's up to us ourselves as we're looking at kind of our business models, as we're looking at how we're growing, as we're looking at how we're positioning ourselves within our spheres of influence and within our communities. It's part of kind of the fabric that we weave together as professionals in the real estate business, but it's something that no one can profess. I can't tell you what luxury looks like for you. I can tell you what it looks like for me. I can tell you, what I think it looks like going forward. But as you look at your clients, it's something that I encourage you to do is really take a look and consider kind of the various communities that we all operate in and consider what those implications mean. And what I mean by that, we'll get to in just a second. I'm actually getting ahead of myself, sorry. But so what that means is when you look at kind of who is the luxury consumer, at the end of the day, who is that person? Well, it's not the Rockefellers or the Vanderbilts getting out of their stretch limousines in their diamond suits. It's people largely like us. So they are entrepreneurs. They are 90% of the ultra high net worth in the world are actually self-made or some combination of self-made. And so when you think about that, it's people just like us. We're problem solvers. We are people that have a vision. We are people, we're doers, we're executors. We are people that kind of want to see action take place. And so when you're talking to your clients and when you're dealing in kind of multi-million-dollar properties, it's important that your clients feel like you are standing shoulder to shoulder with them, that you understand exactly how meaningful this spike in time is. You know, I started my career actually in the luxury hospitality. I worked for Ritz-Carlton for a long time, and I used to love the fact that a vacation at the Ritz or a business traveler that would come to the Ritz, it was so meaningful. I got to be a part of somebody's memory, you know, where we were, you know, whether it was a family that had saved all year for this getaway, or it was a weary business traveler where we were kind of his extended family or home away from home. I loved that was kind of part of that experience. And you know, again, I kind of would greet people like it was like they were coming back into my living room, even though it was a great big lobby of a hotel. And that was a little bit of, you know, as I transitioned into real estate, it was that same kind of experience that I loved where, you know, real estate, I live in Jacksonville, Wyoming, and so I get to sell real estate in a place where it's meaningful. It is a spike in time. Somebody has saved their entire lives to retire there, or they're buying a family legacy place where they, you know, they just love it and they can envision, you know, children and grandchildren being there. You know, for those of you in urban environments, I mean, it's maybe more of a place where people want to be able to see where they can send their kids to school, or somebody just starting out and they're buying their first home. All of those things are extraordinarily meaningful. And so, you know, as I kind of worked through my career, what I started to learn though was that no longer was Ritz and having that be like that brand and that culmination of something like, oh, I stayed at the Ritz. Well, that's, you know, no longer was that enough. What started to happen is I started to understand that the definition of luxury was changing. It was changing with the generations. And so when you think about our parents and our grandparents, right? Like it was all about, I drive a Mercedes-Benz, I have a Rolex watch, I'm carrying a designer handbag, all of those things. And I love all of that. I think it's great, but it is no longer is it about kind of the cachet of the brand that is capturing the minds and the creativity of the consumer. It's all about uniqueness. It's all about, look at what this was, you know, this was created for me. This was something that was, that was bespoke, that was really special. And I think that we even see that in hospitality experiences. I think we see that now. Well, I mean, look at your, the mini bar in your room here at the Four Seasons, where it's like, it's not a Budweiser, right? It is an IPA that's in there. I mean, it's a very simple example, but those are things where it's like somebody thoughtful thought about this. Okay, so now how do you apply that to your real estate business in your respective destination? How do you make it so that some people feel it's special and unique wherever they go? So when you think about, like, and this is actually a study that was done just before quarantine, but what would make life better? You know, it is so not about the money or the things. It's all about kind of the personal connections and the time. And this was a study done by Merrill Lynch, kind of a world wealth study. And so when you think about that, and you think about what is driving a negotiation, at the end of the day, with your high net worth and your ultra high net worth clients, these are the things that are truly at the core. It has very little to do with kind of the money and you know, getting the last dime and the last dollar. It's all about kind of that self-actualization. So with that, you know, when I'm selling real estate, and like I said, I have the wonderful good fortune of selling some incredible properties in Jacksonville, Wyoming, and we were actually charged with selling this. It was about 20 acres on the west bank of Jackson, so on the Snake River, the spectacular view of the Tetons. The property was okay, but infinitely saleable. And so there was one small concern. The family was actually relocating to another one of their homes. They were leaving the country. They were going to Panama, and so we were charged with listing this property. And so, you know, there was one family member actually that was not so excited about the move. And that was Tater. He was their parrot, and he lived in one of the rooms of the house. And so when you think about some of the jobs that we all have to do, right, where I'm like, I can sell just about anything. And I've gotten over some really, really strong objections. But as you're going through a $12 million property and you're like, okay, so here's the thing. It's gonna get a little weird because you're about to meet Tater the parrot, who is really upset about moving, and so it is like, it sounds ridiculous, but he would squawk, like they had a room for him, he would squawk at us, and ultimately, can you imagine, it's not the easiest thing in the world to sell a $12 million house with an angry parrot, but how do you do that, and actually, again, just like, I just had a flashback, holy cow, but I was, so how do you do that and make people feel good, and make people feel like, okay, I can really envision myself here, and I can envision my kids and my grandkids here, and so what we ended up doing is we actually ended up creating, there was a family that they were the next generation of who was going to control this beautiful property, and they could kind of see it, but everybody was really concerned about the parent. And so we said, listen, out of the proceeds, we're going to create an endowment. There is this Gray Parrot Rescue. We can send Tater away, and he'll be happy there, and he's going to be okay, and everybody's going to be happy. And like, those are the kinds of things where you kind of think, oh my gosh, did I just really negotiate a parrot rescue in addition to home sale? But what ends up happening is, so through all of that, the family sold, they moved to Panama, it was wonderful, and now this new family gets to step into those shoes. Well, so now we've got this new family it was grandparents buying it, but it's a legacy. It went into a 1,000-year dynasty trust. And so now we're talking about people that are envisioning what the next generation of owners is going to look like for that property. And so here's what we're dealing with. So pre-pandemic, guys, $10 trillion was at play in the transition of wealth from the baby boomers to the Xers, to the millennials, to the Z and beyond. So over the next 25 years now, that number has escalated to 68 trillion. Now that is largely because we've seen such an incredible creation of wealth. Most recently, in terms of property appreciation, in terms of asset appreciation, the stock market, all of those things. And so that's a tremendous amount of money, and that's going between generations that have vastly disparate means of how they communicate and how they receive and process information. And so how do we transcend that? That really is that's a big question. Right now, the millennials and the Z's don't necessarily have the money. It's all in transition, but they are the ones that are informing the spend. They're the ones that are saying, listen, Grandpa, we can't buy that house. What's going to happen to the parrot? Those are things that are 100% happening. So how do we then overcome those things and appeal to the values of kind of the next generation and where things are headed? And so that's where we start to look at how dynamic and how flexible luxury is. So we're moved, just to recap, we've moved from the luxury of things to the luxury of experiences and making everything special and unique. I think that we went through a very short period where the definition of luxury was really peace of mind. As we were all in quarantine, as we were all worried about the health and safety of our loved ones, as we all were trying to figure out how in the world, what was going to happen to our businesses. And I think that now we are in the period where it is, and this actually comes from a futurist named Jared Weiner, who has a podcast called The Future of Luxury. And he says that the new definition of luxury is time, truth, and trust. I think we heard about it from the two gentlemen right before me, where one, time has garnered a new definition in people's minds because of how they spend it, because of where they spend it, who they spend it with, what they spend their time on. It's the one luxury that you can never get back. And so that's kind of the first thing. The second thing, I think that this is interesting because he calls it truth, but he calls it your individual truth. So it goes back to whatever you've experienced, however you experienced quarantine, however you experienced social unrest, or however you experienced, where you previously lived and what compelled you to move, all of those things are your personal truths. And so to be able to kind of write that story going forward, what does that look like? And that is truly a luxury. And finding someone that then will be able to kind of help you live your best truth is truly a luxury. And that's what we're all doing here. That's what we're learning about today. And then the last one, the trust piece, I think is remarkable. And because they're talking about the fact that there is the next generation. I mean, when I grew up, it was like Tom Brokaw, Dan Rather, those guys were going to tell you the news. They were going to tell you exactly like it was. It was all fact. And now, I have a brother who just got married, and his new wife, she has a psychology, PhD in psychology, and she studied fake news. And I met her, and I thought, this was like a decade ago, but I was like, that is the most irrelevant. Congratulations, Joe. She's never getting a job. And then all of a sudden, I was so dead wrong. I was so wrong. And so now you look at it, and she studies the effects of misinformation or disinformation on the human psyche and what happens to all of us, and why people ask so many more questions, and why it's so incredibly critical for all of us to be the thought leaders and the informers of our sphere of influence, of our peers, and what that means. I mean, the fact that trust now is a luxury, wow, that's pretty telling. And so we have a huge responsibility, especially as trusted advisors, as the people that are out there informing people about the biggest spend. Largely, this is the biggest spend that they will ever make in their lives. And we are those people. We are the people that are actually, now that as the lifestyle, as people are migrating all over the country, all over the world, we're the people that are teaching them how to live in a new environment. It is this great lifestyle migration, and they are trusting us to do that. And that is very much a luxury, and something that more and more people are kind of defining as that. And I think we have to take that very seriously in terms of how we react as thought leaders and leaders in our communities. So this is a Brewster Kellyism. In order to be a thought leader, you must first have a thought. That is something that I learned from him, which I think is wonderful. But it has a lot to say about kind of what does it mean to be a thought leader? I would actually argue you yourself don't have to have the thought. I think you just have to be around people having thoughts, and you can carry them back. I think that's. But it's something where you've got to be, you are the ones that are out there communicating. We are all out there communicating to our spheres of influence in our communities. We are building these communities. And so how we do that, what we say, how we inform people, how we inform each other is absolutely critical to that. And so you look at some of the ways, old luxuries versus new luxury, in terms of where are we going with all of this? You think about the storytelling and the elements of kind of bringing people in. I mean, it's so funny. I've been to cocktail parties or been in social engagements where you have somebody that says like, oh, shit, and I'm like, drinking with the wine, like, I don't know. I don't know. And you kind of feel like, man, I kind of want to leave now. I don't know what this wine is, and I don't really want to hang out with these people. Rather than kind of being like, instead of having somebody say, that this is Chateau Lafite, blah, blah, blah. And let me tell you why I love it. And because, my husband and I had this when we were in Paris on our honeymoon, bringing people in and bringing people into your story where you're like, oh my gosh, now I want to tell your story. I'm an ambassador for you, and I mean, it's funny. One of the developments that we work with is Bentley Tower in Miami, and so and I'm not a car person. I mean, oh my goodness, the car people in the audience. I mean, you should see the people like watching, like the Porsche team over here. Like, this is amazing, yeah. But no. So Bentley Tower is under construction. They have 4 car elevators that take your vehicle up to your unit, and then it's either a 3 or a 4 car garage on the 60th floor, or we're up in this amazing high-rise in Miami. Okay, I've never known any of that, but I was told the story by the developer, and because of how ingenious that development is, and because, well, one, I asked a dumb question. I said, well, so how much infrastructure did you have to put in order to support 4-car elevators. Like, that must have driven your construction costs through the roof. And the guy goes, well, no, because we're charging per square foot for the unit, and we're including the garage space as part of that cost. And I was like, okay, that's amazing. And so, but because all of that kind of happened, now I am an ambassador for this project that I really, I'm not a car fanatic, but I feel a little bit part of that community. And that is so important. And so as we look at, kind of where thought leadership is going and how we can all do that, how do you make people feel included as opposed to excluded with luxury? How do you make them your ambassadors through storytelling? How do we engage in a dialogue versus a monologue? Gone are the days where we can say, I still, the listing pitch is so clear in my mind. Like, you go sit in somebody's living room and be like, of course, Mrs. Seller, Mr. Seller, like, yes, Mrs. Goutrocks, we're gonna put your property in the Wall Street Journal. We're gonna run it in the local newspaper. We have the full back page. Don't worry about a thing. And you just hope that somebody would feel compelled to call on that listing, right? Those days are gone. It is all about kind of personal introductions. It's about using technology to enable the relationship. How do we cut through the noise? And how do we find the people, how do we find the Bentley people that are gonna love or the Porsche people, that are gonna love on that amenity, and how do we make the world smaller? I know that's right. I don't know the secret. I'm working on it somewhere. But all of those things are absolutely critical. The other piece of this is sustainability, and again, we go back to kind of the baby boomers don't necessarily care about this. Xers a little bit more, but the millennials and the Zs, in terms of what is happening in the world and how is the project sustainable, what is the impact, what is the carbon footprint, all of those things. We can't just be experts kind of on one thing. We've got to now be able to transcend a lot of generations in how we're talking and how we're defining luxury. And that brings us to the power of everybody in this room. So I love it when somebody asks me what I do for a living, and I say I'm a community builder instead of saying I'm a realtor, because I think that people are more willing to sit next to you in a dinner party. Or they're like, oh, she's not gonna try to sell me something. I still try to sell them something. But the fact that when you think about what people are doing, and again, I say that, and I know I'm being a little bit repetitive, but when you think about the trust that they put in all of us, especially kind of post-pandemic, when everybody felt so compromised and so vulnerable, the ability to be a community builder is a huge honor. And we're building community amongst all of us in this room. I give Diane so much credit with what she's doing, where you're breaking down walls and barriers to communication, and you're kind of you're helping people create the next chapter of their life together. So this is an amazing slide, and I put it up because one, it's from a venture capital firm called NFX, and it just makes me feel really smart that I get to talk about it for a minute. But it's because what NFX studied here was the fact that creativity kind of has a moment in time where it can be monetized, where it gets monetized. And we are at a very exciting period of time where technology and community building, which is our skill set, and finances are all coming together at the same time. People have more capital than ever. We've got $68 trillion that is moving through the marketplace. And right now, community is the thing that people are driving home. Where it's at your core. You want to feel connected and part of something. So rather than having technology be divisive, what they're saying is that you can use it to actually enable greater community and greater connection. And for all of us, that's very, very exciting. Because then you start to look at ways where we can, instead of fearing technology, where, I remember, in the office as Zillow was coming in and as, new technology innovation was happening all the time, and people were like, oh my gosh, technology's gonna replace us. They're gonna be robots selling houses soon and all those things, and you're like, that's never gonna happen. Could technology ever replace Jim Wahlberg? No. Gosh, no. You know, I mean, because it's all about the relationship. Now, can we use technology to enable and enhance relationships and improve people's experience overall? 100%. 100%. And so, you know, when you look at that and you look at the fact of like where things are going and what is truly, truly driving the preferences of the wealthy, it's all about kind of finding new ways to connect and find community. So you look at whether it's sports or philanthropy or entertainment, public speaking, you know, nowhere on there is perusing the real estate section of the New York Times. That's not on there. Open housing, that is not on there. Or reading, you know, new listing postcards. None of those things are on there because these are how the wealthy, these are how our clients want to spend their time. So we should meet them there. We should meet them there in these communities because that's really the secret and that's where it exists. So so I put these kind of 6 points together, and this to me is where we've got the greatest opportunity kind of going forward as the community builders and as people that are truly defining the future of our industry, finding community in new venues. So what does that look like? You know, it doesn't just have to be like I belong to this club or I contribute to this charity. You know, we've done a lot of things virtually, you know, and we just heard from 2 incredible tech thought leaders about ways that that we can do this online and we can engage with people and it's just as meaningful and just as credible. And so, you know, really finding those ways where we can find community and transcend, we can also look to transcend a lot of that age gap and kind of the generational gap. Make sure that you're offering access to information and networks that were not previously available. Everybody likes to know a secret. And so the more you can kind of say, you know what, I love, you know, there's this house that isn't readily on the market yet, or, you know, there's an amazing pocket listing that's coming up, or of course I can get you into that restaurant. You know, like I'm Julie Faupel, I can get you into any restaurant. You know, like those are things that's what your clients want, that's what people are looking for, and it's absolutely critical. Collaboration beyond borders, this is something that we're already seeing, you know, as the world opened back up post-COVID, and as technology, you know, we are in a place where technology is creating change faster than it ever has before. And so with technology-enabled change, we are seeing where people are no longer confined to, okay, I'm gonna list this property in my own market. You know, I just told you a story about Bentley Tower in Miami, but my market is Jacksonville, Wyoming. But it doesn't matter. You know, I mean, more so than ever, we need to look outside of our markets. I mean, Kofi is a perfect example of somebody that he's everywhere. But that's just what he does, you know, and that's because he's a thought leader and constantly influencing kind of how we all think about things. So make sure that you're looking that way. And you know, the other piece of that too is, you know, one of the things that we did during COVID and then we kept it up was doing panels with feeder markets, you know, where you're like, that can be virtual. But I mean, there's so many people that are curious about what's happening in Jackson and have a lot more interest than, you know, they might be sitting in their office in Chicago, no offense, Patrick, but like they might be sitting in their office in Chicago and they're dreaming about skiing in Jacksonville. And so, you know, the more we can kind of offer them a Zoom on what the ski conditions are like, or on what, you know, what are happening, the economics of a ski town, all of those things, we get more viewers and more kind of subscribers that way than we do from kind of just, you know, the typical like, you know, email postcard or whatever. Technology enhanced relationships. So this is something I mentioned. You know, we are using technology more and more to enhance the relationships that we have. So using publicly available data to build profiles on our clients and then to match those things up with the lifestyle profiles of the listings that we have. Or to make recommendations to clients. I mean, a perfect example too is like, so the Four Seasons here, I have a client that loves to buy Four Seasons penthouses. And so, like, if I can just know about when those are available, I'm just gonna keep selling those to him. It doesn't matter where they are. And so, how do I get that information, you know, from the ether? How do I get that information so that then we can actually enable a sale? It makes his life easier. It makes my life better, everybody's happy at the end of the day. And that's a great example too of the brand and the consumer working together in a partnership mentality. How do we become co-creators of an environment that is actually mutually beneficial? How do we do that? We have I have a great client that is, he's like Doogie Howser. He has like 7 degrees from Stanford. He's brilliant. He's like 30. And he and his wife moved to Jackson Hole. They bought a really expensive house. And then he said, okay, I want you to help me build my community here. And I was like, oh, of course I will. But he said, I'd like you to throw a party for cool people. I was like, I am the cool people party girl. Like, yes, let's do this. And so, what did we do there? We created a community that was then mutually beneficial. I got to meet some of his friends. He met the entire Jackson Hole community, and everybody won from that. And then the last thing is, and this is really important because I've heard it a little bit, and more than anything, with everything that we're doing, with everything that we learned today, you are more valuable to your clients and the consumers than ever. And so when you talk about commission integrity, and you talk about the fact that there is a value to working with a trusted advisor that invests heavily in themselves, make sure that that's what your clients see, and make sure that that's what you stand behind. Because I think a lot of times, like somebody goes, oh, well, I'm going to negotiate the commission because that's right. And that's okay. That's fine with the client, but you know what? Excellence isn't for everybody. You will get better results when you work with somebody that is informed, with somebody that is current, with somebody that is investing constantly in their future, and that means in the future of your community and the future of your sphere of influence. And so make sure that you stand behind that, because when luxury is done right, there is no need to discount.
Yes, ma'am.
So with that, I'm happy to take any questions or yes.
Totally should not have said that right here. I recognize that. You didn't hear me, I hope, right? Oh, you didn't? Yeah. Okay, so wow, again, another mind-blown presentation. Thank you, Julie. That is really fantastic. There was a slide up there that if we could go back to it, go back 3. There, right there. Nope, one more. Okay, come forward. That's it.
Yes.
All right, so I don't know about you all, but I want her to double down a little bit on this slide, okay? Because it's a great slide, and when I read your deck, I was like, this is really terrific. It's too small.
Yeah, it is too small. I'm sorry.
You know, it is so back. It is so back. And so what I want everybody to do is take a minute and think through tying together, really, from the morning to right now, because it was all curated to do this, right? Where this is what we're talking about. Interests, passions, and hobbies. Okay, this is where you are the connective tissue in your community to pull these people together. We spend a lot of time on Portia. I love that. But I don't have theirs, right? And that's really terrific, but it's one thing. So for those of you who can't see it, I'm going to read it from the top. It's sports, but the number 2 one is where you spend a lot of time. Can you talk about that?
Sure, philanthropy. I think that's, and I know a lot of people in this room do the same thing, where you have something that you're passionate about. I happen to live in the most philanthropic county in the nation. So Teton County, Wyoming gives more per capita than any, and we only have 20,000 people in our entire county. But it is, it's a place where a lot of people, we have 250 nonprofits. And so, there is a space for everyone. And when you think about the things where you're giving back, where people are making other people's lives better. I mean, everybody in this room, congratulations, because we're all successful. Success is like getting out of bed. But like the more you can help make other people successful, the more fulfilling and enriched your life is. And so, and the better you feel about that, then you want to bring other people in, and so it isn't like, we're selling these houses to wealthy people. We're defining what luxury looks like in the future. We're also kind of talking a lot about, what is the fabric of the community? What are the values there? And we talked about that at the beginning, in terms of people being self-made and wanting to connect with other people that share those same values, that have that same level of integrity. And I think that's where philanthropy comes in, where it's like, look, we all, and my husband is the one that said this, so I can't take credit for it, but he said, you know, Julie, if we expect Jacksonville, Wyoming to make us successful, then we need to make sure that this community is successful. I think we all carry that on our backs.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly right. And tell them what you call your husband, because he calls you Julie.
I call him that. I call my husband by our full first and last name. We've been married for 20 years, and Kofi, they're buds, and so like, but so Matt Faupel is like, that's just who he is.
He's Matt Faupel.
He's Matt
One
Faupel.
word, it's Matt
Yeah,
Faupel.
it is.
Crack me up. All right, so we've got a couple minutes left. Are there any questions? Because I've got a microphone. Just toss your hand up if you've got one. Okay, I'm coming to you. Hang on, Marie. That's just me. Yeah, it's like my brother.
Maria Kapetzis, Douglas Elliman, New York and Florida. So how do you suggest we incorporate these sports and philanthropy? Sports, number one category. How?
What do you like to do?
Everything.
So how do you then connect? Like, can you, if you're going to do an open house, can you incorporate wellness? Can you have a yoga? Have like a, you know, do something fun and different, you know, where it's like surprise and delight. Like, it's fun. We can all, like, you throw an open house, you have really marginal wine and maybe some snacks. Like let's think about it differently, you know, and let's kind of challenge ourselves. You know, if it's not that, is there a way that you can, you know, help activate a different segment of your community around something that is sports related, you know, and do something like that. I mean, I was just talking to someone that said, well, I've got a lot of, you know, sports teams that are moving into my market. Okay, so what does that mean? Like, that's a whole other community that then you get to activate. So how do you do that? Or or pick up a new hobby? Matt Faupel, for the love, we have to limit how many hobbies he has. And so, but like, that's one of the things where it's like, maybe learn something new, you know, and challenge your brain that way.
Julie, would you expand a little bit? We're talking about the new definition of luxury, and one of those is time. We are in a space where we have the opportunity to really address that with our clients. If time is a big deal to them, it's a luxury. Do you have some thoughts about ways we might act that out in a different way?
Sure. Well, thank you for that question, because one of the things that, like, I always make notes to make sure that I touch on, and one of the things that, as I was talking about kind of moving from luxury hospitality into real estate, you know, it was amazing to me because in hotels, in the Ritz system, we could replicate a stay anywhere somebody was in the world. Mrs. Galrox would be in New York City, that she'd be in Paris, France, she'd be in Singapore. We knew through guest recognition software what she liked. If she liked cold white wine, turned out at 6 p.m., we could replicate all of that. In real estate, we've never had that luxury because it's always been so siloed. And so finding ways to drop those barriers of communication and stop forcing your clients to re-educate every time they go into a new market. So becoming more and more kind of well-versed in what their passions, interests, and hobbies are. I mean, I know, Jim, you and I worked on a deal together where it was like, we talked on the phone more about those clients and on that transaction because we wanted to be of service. We wanted to make sure that we had all of the information that we could possibly have before those people even hit our offices, you know, so that then they didn't have to re-educate us. We already knew most of what we needed to know in order to affect a transaction. And so that's the kind of stuff where it's like that, you know, the more efficient we can get. And again, there's so much technology out there that can help enable that. Realm, my company, is one of them, but there are so many other ways that we can kind of help to enact some of those, you know, some of the publicly available information and use that to discern how we are you know, how we are serving our clients to the best of our ability, using AI, using algorithm and intelligence. There's just so much out there.
Thank you, Julie. And so I promised I was just going to read off a few of these. And can I share your slides with
Of
folks?
course,
I mean,
yes.
there's
Yeah,
fantastic information on it that could stand alone. So I will share these. But so number one was sports. Number two is philanthropy. We unpacked that a lot. But remember, folks, tomorrow we're closing out with a super fun charity auction. Be thinking about that, right? Like that. There's a reason why we're doing that, to get you in that mindset. Number three is public speaking. Number four is the outdoors. That's general, but cool. And then number five is technology. So we'll be sending you, in particular, Julie's slides, because they were really full of a lot of dense information. Dense is good. Dense is good. So thank you, my friend.
Yes.